All right, the 16BH has really great storage underneath the seating area of the dinette. But the trouble is to access that storage, you need to take everything off of the top of each of those little booths. And that means you got to have somewhere to put it all. So like got all the cushions piled up over there. That piece of plywood that would go over the top has to be removed. It's a bit inconvenient to do all that. So I'm going to put something in the front of each of these to access that compartment without having to take everything apart. And I've seen some pictures online of people that have put doors there, and I've seen some people that have made drawers as well. I think I'm going with the drawer idea first. My thoughts with all this one goes all the way back to the wall, so very deep, and there's a lot of space here to pull a drawer out. The reason a drawer will be nice is if it were a door, you'd almost have to lay on your belly to kind of reach all the way under there and get whatever you need. Whereas a drawer, I could just slide it on out and have full access to it and just push it right back when I'm done with it. I've got some wiring here. That's just an extension cord, but it goes to the front storage compartment to keep my water tank and my water lines heated during the winter months. So this one won't be very tall, like the drawer will go all the way back to the wall, but it'll just be as high as that hole that I have cut in the side there. So it won't be very tall drawer, but it'll be a very deep drawer. Because we've got the wheel arch that protrudes, a drawer won't be able to go very far. It'll just go right up to that piece of aluminum. So it'll be a more shallow drawer. And that's kind of necessary anyways because there's not a lot of space to pull it out here. So it'll be just wide enough, or I should say just long enough to pull out to the fire extinguisher to access whatever I need. But it'll be taller. So this one I can make it as tall of a drawer as I want. So if I need to store something that's taller in there, I certainly can. I'm thinking of the best way to approach this because I really don't want to screw this up. If I cut these things wrong, then it'll bother me for the rest of my life. So looking here, I'm thinking because they are framed around the perimeter, and this is just like 1/8 paneling here. This is not, I mean, you could push and flex it a little bit. I'm going to probably have to build some vertical piece here and a vertical piece here to give it some structural support so when the drawer closes, it's not closing right up against this where it might chip or break over time. So whatever front I use for the drawer here, I want it to look as factory as possible. And I want to use that same type of paneling that we have in the camper now. I was hoping that I could just get one of the doors that we have on the cabinets. These are all 21 by 14. And something like that I could convert into a drawer very easily. And it would fit perfectly fine right there. But those are not something you could just order. You can't really get parts for this thing. I went to my dealer that I bought the camper from to see if that was something that they could even special order or obtain. And it's unfortunately, it's just really not an option. But what they did have that they gave me for free, which is very nice of them, is a spare sheet of that paneling itself. So my plan is to use that as the facing of the drawers. What I'll put around the exterior edges, I'm not sure. This stuff, like I said, it's 1/8 of an inch thick, and you can see that it is actual 1970s paneling with the adhesive paper over top of what's essentially just plywood. So I don't know if I cut this, I got to see how much it frays, you know, to make an edge banding with that. I'll play with it and see. But I'm going to use that to cut and make a facing for each drawer, so at least it looks somewhat factory. So before I go cutting into this, I want to see how that sheet of plywood cuts on my table saw. So I'm going to do some measuring and make the front of these drawers before I do anything else and see how that turns out. And if that's a failure, then so be it. At least I won't be tearing into the side of these things unnecessarily first. So to see how much this piece of paneling tears when being cut on the table saw, I've got a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood that'll really make the structure of the front of the drawer. And I'm just going to sandwich the finished piece that'll be on the outside between another piece of plywood. This will just be a sacrificial piece to hopefully keep all of this nice and tight, so when I cut it, nothing tears off of the piece that I want to show on the outside. So this makes me hopeful that I could cut a 3/4 inch strip of this and use it as edge banding for the perimeter of the drawer. So it looks pretty good. Got everything sandwiched together, taped up nice and tight. Gonna go ahead and rip this down to 18¼ inches. Now I'm gonna cut it down to 14 inches. Got a nice clean cut. Turning out pretty good so far. All right, I got two identical facings, 18¼ by 14. Let's go ahead and unwrap them and see how it looks. It's gonna turn out pretty nice, I think. So this is turning out pretty good so far. Ultimately, this will be glued to the plywood and make the face of the drawers. It's nice and clean and uniform all around. It'll be good. I'll have to figure out what to do about this edge here. Probably try cutting a strip of this and gluing it on. We'll see. I may end up just getting some edge banding from Lowe's or Home Depot or something and covering it with that, even though it doesn't match too well. Not sure yet. That's a problem for another day. But before I glue this to the plywood, I need to build the box. This will go on at the very end. So I'm going to build the box that's going to make up the drawer for each side, left and right. There'll be different sizes because of that wheel well that's in there. And once I get all that done, then I'll go ahead and measure before I start cutting into the dinette. I don't want to cut holes until I'm absolutely sure I've got everything else done. Got the boxes for each drawer done. The one on the right is short but deep, and the one on the left is shallow but long. So just gotta let the glue dry and sand them down real good. And then I need to get some plywood for the bottom. I thought I had that here, but I don't. So that'll be another trip to the store to do the bottoms. Right now I'm just going to measure up how I want to cut the opening in the side here. And then I want to build out a frame so that the drawer slides in and out on something more substantial, like this kind of wood, rather than just the piece of the paneling. Probably need to build out something on the floor here as well to have the drawer slide on. So that'll fit in just like that on both sides, and then it'll be screwed here. There's really only going to be one screw here and one screw here on the other side, holding this whole tray in place. I just don't want any screws on the outside here. Even though I could pick nice decorative screw heads and make it look pretty, I prefer not. So it's going to come from here to here. It's only going to be like a ½ inch worth of threads that'll be into this piece of wood, but that's just how it's going to be. I don't think it's going to move much, and if I'm really concerned about it, I could simply cut a block of wood to go across the back. That'll keep this whole thing from sliding forward and back, which I really doubt it's going to move, especially once the drawer gets put on here. I don't think it's going anywhere. All right, now for the moment of truth, cutting the opening. It's out. We'll see if the drawer fits. Gotta say, that's not too bad. It's about as centered as I could get it based on how things were framed. I had to move it over this a ways a bit, so when I take it out, it would clear the compartment there. I'll have hardware on this, of course. But it'll come out, let you get what you want, and then just put it on back. I think it's going to work out. Ended up putting some wood and Kerty board right up against the wall of the trailer, just to make sure that thing doesn't move around. It's very unlikely that it would have, but now it's definitely not going anywhere. And I got the second one cut out as well. And since this is a short drawer because of the wheel well, I've got a little bit of Kerty board and a piece of wood there just up against the aluminum. Again, this is all screwed in. You know, it's screwed in here, but that way it'll just keep it from moving around even ever so slightly. I've got the facing glued up on these drawers, but what I noticed is that the plywood that I have is bowed inward. It's kind of concaved. you could see how there's a gap that develops towards the middle here. So that means if I put this edge banding across the top, it causes a lip perfectly flush here, perfectly flush here, but then because this sinks in, I've got a lip here. So what I'm going to try to do, I've got this not glued yet, I've just got it clamped in place. I'm going to see if I take a Dremel, if I could just force a bit of concavity to that so it meets with this, because if there's a lip here, that's just going to end up peeling off in a short period of time. So I'm glad I tested it first, because that was a failure. No matter how cautious I am with the angle here, the Dremel just ends up peeling off the paper material that's on the face of the paneling. So I don't think I'm going to be able to use this as edge banding, just because of the way that dips in. I mean, you could see the ledge is almost 1/8 of an inch poking out. It looks like crap, and I don't want to put any outside corner trim across here, because none of the other drawers or cabinets in the camper have corner trim like that. So I'm going to try something else. I had Lowe's do a small sample color match and put a little dab of it on the paneling. That's kind of how it'll look. I'm going to try painting that edge and see if it looks somewhat nice. You know what? This looks okay. It matches close enough, and considering that some of the plywood grain kind of pokes through, it almost looks a little bit like wood grain across the edge. So I'm going to roll with this. And if anybody wants the color code for this particular shade, there you go. You could freeze frame on this, and Lowe's can mix you up some. I added some little feet to the underside of each drawer, so when they're pulled out from under the dinette, they are relatively level and don't scrape on the floor. So I got this decorative trim stuff on Amazon. Not sure how well this is going to work, but my idea is to use it on the inside edges of where the drawer is going to slide. And I thought it might kind of match the black plastic trim they put in the dinette elsewhere. It kind of does. It's a totally different product though. And it's a peel and stick type of thing. You just peel off the back and stick it on. I mean, it looks all right now, but I'm not so sure how well that's going to hold up. I think after I open and close these drawers a few times, especially in cold weather, it's going to probably just peel right off. But we'll find out. Glued, screwed, sanded, painted. Got the hardware on front to make it easy to pull the drawers out. Edges look all right for me as far as the paint goes. Oh no, I think they turned out pretty good. Now let's go ahead and put them in the camper and see how they work. All right, this black trim stuff was pretty much a mistake. It added a 1/4 inch of thickness to the left and the right. And because I wasn't thinking about it when I cut the opening and measured the drawer and everything like that, I didn't account for that dimension. And so it does, the drawer wouldn't fit. Bottom line, I took it off the left and the right. I'll leave it on top and the bottom. It doesn't make any sense. It's going to fall off anyways. Other than that, though, I think they do fit pretty well. They look fairly stock. Got that extension cord that goes up to the heating element in the compartment for my water, so I use it in the winter. That drawer is shallow because it accommodates that cord. And on this side here, also I think it turned out pretty good. Looks nice enough for me. And this drawer stops at the wheel well, so it's not quite as deep in another dimension, but it'll do the job. Just to show you the action on these, how they work. Lift them up a little bit, pull them out, get your stuff, and they slide right back in. There's enough friction just with sliding across the 2x4s and the framing there that I don't expect these things will move around much in transit, especially once they're loaded up with gear and whatnot. So just giving you one more look at how this all turned out. When you're walking in the camper, they look factory. I mean, this looks like it was meant to be here. Yeah, I gotta say, I think they turned out pretty good. I think they'll work good. And that's really the way it should have been from the factory. The amount of work that it took to build these things, I could understand why. I mean, this would have probably added a couple $100 to the sticker price. But I'm glad I did it. I think they'll be good. And I hope you find this video helpful in case you want to do the same sort of modification to your 16BH. Thanks for watching.